All right, so if you were a child of the 80s or before, you know that for about a little over 20 years, the U.S. Army had a slogan. You can be all you can be. All you can be. Remember that? It was on all the TV shows. I remember in high school hearing this commercial that would play on the 3 channels we had. There was this drive to be the best, right? I mean, this is what they had a little catchphrase. We do more before 9 a.m. than most people do all day. And that was something that resonated. We all had this sense we want to accomplish something. Deep down in the core of our being, we want to be valued. We want to have accomplishment. We want to do this. And the U.S. Army, this is the longest slogan they had. They really tied this in and made sure that that was something we wanted. We want to be filled. We want to belong. We want to succeed. You know, Solomon, the son of King David, was known as the wisest man who ever lived. He prayed specifically for wisdom. He prayed that God make me more wise. And all through Scripture, he is referred to. In Ecclesiastes, when he begins writing this book and this story, he starts sharing this. He understood that there was more to the here and now. He understood there was more to life than just what we could get our arms around in this moment in time. And he had everything. He was also the wealthiest man in the world. And so as he acquired things and possession, he came back, and there was a phrase in the first few chapters of Ecclesiastes. If you read that this afternoon, you'll see he comes back and he summarizes everything the world had to offer that he had collected. He came back and said is meaningless. Everything is meaningless. So he had understood this, but he also had something else. I love what he writes in Ecclesiastes 3, verse 11. It'll be up on the screens. He says this. He says, he has made everything beautiful in his time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. He's also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. Now also, just real quick, if you've not downloaded the YouVersion app, you can follow the live event, all the scripture and some of the notes and outliners in there so you can follow along with us today as well. But in Ecclesiastes, Solomon is letting everyone know that there's something inside of us. We are longing for that day. We are longing for more. And I'm sure that if we were, honest, we could probably even say, hey, I've gone through life at whatever point you're at, wherever stage of life you're in, that we would all, if we were honest, probably say, I've longed for something more than what I've had. I mean, there's, when the goals that you have when you're in high school to the goals that you have when you get out of college or you've started the whatever career you've gone into, to when you hit your 40s and your 50s and your 60s and beyond, there's probably been some stages that you've hit, some benchmarks in your life where you've stopped, you've paused, and you've said, I wish I've done more. I wish this would have turned out maybe a little different. Now, maybe you don't have any regrets. Maybe, I'm not talking about that. But maybe there's just something inside of us that we are driven to be filled, to be whole, and without lacking. C.S. Lewis said this, if I find myself a desire which no experience in the world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. That I was made for another world. So deep down, this world's just not going to add up for us. Deep down, we will come to a conclusion that this world is at times just meaningless. So the goals and objectives maybe we had that when we sat down and we said, I'm going to go and make $1 million, or I'm going to become the youngest vice president or president, or I'm going to own my own business and we're going to take over this part of the world or this market share or whatever it may be. There's a point in time in our history, in our story, where we pause and we say, I'm just not sure that's all it is. I mean, frankly, for many, you've been reminded way too frequently. You've sat by hospital beds, their lives have been cut short. You've received doctor's reports that you wish you could change. You've been to way too many funerals. You've been to way too many. Loved ones, young ones, spouses, parents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, friends, And we sit beside them and we think back and we begin to really chew up that job that was driving me, that hobby that I had that was really pushing me, the times that I spent resources on things. We really kind of come away and we go, it was meaningless because I was made for more than here and now. Because my here and now is about to expire. We just don't have that long. There's an American psychologist. If you had psychology in high school or in college, and there was this American psychologist, and it was kind of the framework for our psychology today that we study. Is Abraham Maslow. He wrote this paper in 1943. It was called The Theory of Human Motivation. And there was a pyramid, and you'll see it up on the screen, but in this pyramid, it proposed that healthy human beings have a certain number of needs. And they go from the bottom up. And that bottom is the foundation or the base, and it moves up. And and Maslow's so-called hierarchy of needs, as they're presented, you can't move to the third or fourth level until the base is completed. And once the lower, the more basic needs are met, then you can move on. But at the very foundation of that pyramid, the very bottom of his base, is these physiological needs: food, water, warmth, and rest. That was the basis. So in 1943, this guy writes this down. He goes, this is it. And psychologists have used it. And this is where we kind of get these basic needs of the human life. So based off what we know already, based on what we know from the wisest man on the earth and King Solomon, and based on what we know on our own internal workings of who we are in the quiet of the night, early in the morning, whenever it is when you do your thinking. I don't know about you, but from about 7 a.m. Till about 9 o'clock at night is probably not my best thinking time because you're scrambling. I mean, I scramble. I'm assuming you're scrambling too. You've got phone calls. You've got texts. You've got people knocking on your door. There's some. But early in the morning, right before the sun comes up, or when our house gets quiet at night, that seems to be the time when my thinking happens. Now, I would love to tell you that during the day I am fully engaged, but there are times I'm like, squirrel, and you're like, what happened? But early in the morning and late at night seems to be that time. So if we go to what the wisest man on the planet ever lived said, what we've seen in American psychologists have said is kind of the basis for our modern psychology, and what we know deep down inside of here, that you and I are part of more of not a pyramid, but of a love triangle. We want to be all that we can be. We want to be all we can be. Nobody sets out to be a failure. Nobody sets out to be a loser. We all want to be all we can be. And we have these basic desires that have to be met. That seems to be true. We have these basic desires. We all want to be loved. We all need food. We all need water. We all need rest. And everything that we appear to want on this planet is meaningless. So we want to do great things. We have basic needs that have to be met, yet everything we strive for appears to be meaningless. Well, just like the audience at the Sermon on the Mount, just like that audience there, they had some of the same wants, desires, and realities we have. The same group. This truth is timeless. It didn't change by culture or country or continent. It's the truth. And from the mountainside, Jesus continues in the Sermon on the Mount, and he says, Matthew 5:6, and he says this: blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are those. It's almost kind of ironic to me that Jesus has just come out of the desert of fasting for 40 days, where he faced the temptation from Satan, and they went one-on-one. And it was after he had given up food and water for that amount of time that he makes sure that we understand he equates righteousness to food and water. So if righteousness is where we're heading and what we're wanting and striving for, then to truly be filled or whole, we have to desire righteousness. And we have to desire it over everything else, because everything else is meaningless. I mean, when we live short of this, we're going to feel empty and lacking. We'll feel empty and lacking. I love what Eric Simpson, he's one of our Christian writers, he wrote this. He says, I think at the bottom layer of human need lies the most basic and authentic hunger, which is for the life of God and to be in communion with the Holy Trinity. It is a hunger for divine light, divine fire, divine love, all of which are ways of talking about the same personal and holy divine being who is not limited by necessity, so that he cannot give each and every single one of us his constant attention and care. We often, however, allow our basic human need for the grace of God, the presence of divine love, and his righteousness revealed in Jesus Christ to be fragmented through resistance and rebellion against God. See, Jesus connects our righteousness, this desire of what we need, to our basic needs, to our basic ever needs. That he understood, I believe that Jesus understood that he really wanted us to understand and grasp righteousness, so he tied it back to food and water, because everybody alive understands the value of food and water. Every one of us understand what it means to go without food and go without water. We have to have them to survive. There are days we can go without one or the other, but we can't go a continual period of time. We have to have it. See, in John chapter 4, there's the story of Jesus meets this woman at the well, and she's had this rough life, and they're at the well, and he says to her, he says, give me a drink. And she goes, hey, you don't even have a cup to put it in. And he goes, if you knew who I was, you would ask me, and I would have given you the living water. He made sure that she understood we're not talking about H2O. We're not talking about the H2O. We're talking about life. And I am giving you living water. You thirst. He goes on to say, and he also does this to explain to himself, that they're thirsty for this living water. Jesus would go on to say in John chapter 6 and verse 48 says, I am the bread of life. So after the Beatitudes, Sermon on the Mount, he is actually expressing himself to the crowds again. He's saying, hey, I'm the living water, but I'm also the bread of life. So the very two objects I was using to make sure you understood the importance of righteousness, in your life, I want to make sure you grasped. Because I'm your living water and I'm your bread of life. Anything outside of that is meaningless. Everything outside of that is meaningless. So for us to truly seek after him, for us to truly hunger and thirst for Christ, John 6:35 says this, and then Jesus declared, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. We won't go hungry, and we won't be thirsty. So maybe the question then that we have to ask, and we got to be honest, that we have to ask each other is that what are we thirsty and hungry for? What are we thirsty and hungry for? And how do we know? How do we know what we're hungry and thirsty for? Well, I would say this. Whatever that we spend the most or most of our money on and what we think the most about is probably what we hunger and thirst for. I mean, if we opened up our checkbooks and credit card statements and we opened up our calendar and we saw where we've committed our time and we've committed our resources, we'll probably realize pretty quick what our true God, what we're truly striving for, what we really are hungry for, what we're really thirsty for, because these things will reveal to us where our energy, our resources, and our time go. I mean, I think for some people, we're hungry for power and prestige. That we really want to be on top. That from whatever happened when we were younger to we were going to put everybody else out of business. We were going to be the president, the CEO, the owner, whatever it may be, and we were going to go after it. And at all cost, we want authority. We want power. We want prestige. We want people to look at us and say, we've arrived. You know, maybe for some, it's just that praise and adoration. We want people to acknowledge us. that what we've done, where we've gone, where we've been has meant something. So we tell our stories of where we are the focus of the limelight, where our name is surrounded on the billboard. You know, for some, we grew up in such a way that possessions and stuff, that if we just could get more, then somebody will look at me and say, I have value. That if I drive this car, or if I live in this neighborhood, or if I have the new latest, greatest gadget stuff, if I could collect all those things and I could bring it in, then everybody around me will applaud. And they'll thank me because I have this. Or maybe you would say it's more of the pleasure and gratification. That I got to find the quick fix, whatever that may be. I got to have this because that's where my value comes. See, righteousness leads us to wholeness. When it says your hunger and thirst for righteousness, for you to be filled, to made whole, complete, lacking in nothing, but whole. And see, for some, that is so hard because what we've done is we hunger and thirst. We all hunger and thirst, but what are we filling it in with? Are we doing it with righteousness, or are we doing it with things? Power and prestige, praise and adoration, possession and stuff? Are we doing it with pleasure and gratification? Righteousness. Righteousness. When Jesus says, I am the bread and I am the water. And with me, you're not going to be hungry and you're not going to be thirsty. So am I empty? Are you empty? Have you tried everything and you realized that what Solomon learned, that all is meaningless? Are you at the cusp of retirement and you look back and you think about the weekends you sacrificed? You look at the amount of hours that you've put in and you look about the money that you have made and you think to yourself, was it worth it? Was it worth it? Have you gone into, when you're in that midlife in the 40s or late 40s, early 50s, and you think, holy cow, it's almost over. And the realization of, I am now playing the back nine. Was it worth it? Or maybe you're that young fireball, somebody in your 20s, and you're going after it, and you're taking every hill, you've taken every job that they've thrown at you, they've thrown you responsibility after responsibility, and you sacrifice whatever because you think if I say yes here, then they'll say yes to me on this side. And what have we given up? And what have we sacrificed? So do we continue to talk about trying harder for righteousness? Because I believe deep down what it says to us is, I got to get this settled in my life first, God. If you will give me enough time to just work on myself, then God, I'll give you all of me later. If you'll give me enough time to take this hill or to this project or this season, or I'm in this moment, I cannot begin to tell you. And you maybe, so this is not throwing rocks because I don't have names, because I use this line too. But I don't know, are you tired of hearing people say they're busy? I'm just so busy. Then stop. I don't know what else to say. Are you tired of people that when they're late on a project, they're late on a deadline, they didn't make it in time for the family meal, whatever it is, and they just say, well, we're busy. It's become the get out of jail free card. And I just want to slap people in the head. Then stop. Stop. You're so busy, don't be busy. If your job makes you that miserable that you have to work 22 hours a day to make it, stop. You're not living anyway. Right? But I wonder if we really need to tackle the issue at hand, because I think what drives us, and what I think drives us in this hunt for righteousness, is that we get caught trying to backfill in our lives. And what I mean by that is that we think, I'll do all of these things, and there'll be a certain point in time. There'll be a weekend, there'll be a year, there'll be a part. I'm going to get the kids out of school, and then, God, I'm going to give you some time. I'm thinking about volunteering here. Maybe I'll go out of the country and do some work over there. But then that's when I'll have it. But we never really have that time because it's really not ever important until the very end. And then at that very end, that very moment, we realize that my clock is about to expire. Then we start talking about the things that are really important. And as it turns out, most of the things we've done were not. Christianity Today did some research, and this is what it said. It said that Jesus talked much about money. 16 of his 38 parables were concerned with how to handle money and possessions. In the Gospels, an amazing 1 out of 10 verses, 288 in all, deals directly with the subject of money. The Bible offers 500 verses on prayer, less than 500 verses on faith, but more than 2,000 verses on money and possessions. So today, as we talk about this hunger for righteousness, we're going to talk a little bit about money. And what does that mean? It's not that money is more important than prayer or faith. It might just be that it's the biggest issue that we may face in our life. It may be that Jesus totally understood that money and possessions were going to be a hang-up for us. It's going to be a hang-up for us. That, I come across people every day. I try my very best to be in the world talking with people, not just get into the Christian bubble. I do my best at that. I want to talk to people. I want to hear their story. I want to see what's happening. And frankly, I'm not come across a lot of people that don't believe in prayer. The pagan of the most pagan. I've had people come to me and say, would you pray for me? And I'm like, really? Why? If you don't believe, then why am I praying for you? But okay, and so then I jump in, I'll pray with people. And I wonder, I've had, again, the most pagan of pagan people come to me, and faith is not really a hang-up for them. They understand this need for faith and believing and belonging. They understand it. They feel it. There's a connection that happens with it. But what I believe I see is for people that say they believe in prayer and believe in faith, struggle with possessions and money. Good people. Good Bible reading, praying, faith-toting, believing Christians that have great intentions struggle with money and possessions. So what I came away with, and so just humor me, that, for most of us, if we say what we do for a living, we tell people our job. Now, maybe it's just me. Do you ever wonder, I know how much they make. I know what job they have. I got a range. I know that I got an idea because I remember taking that class in high school and I remember taking that class in college that said, now, do you want to be an accountant? They're going to make X. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. Or should I be an attorney? Yeah, school, check that off. But you knew where the money would be, and so you knew it. So I believe that if we went crazy one weekend and we said, next Sunday, everybody bring in your W-2s. We're going to tape them to the wall. We'd all go, hey, that's not bad. I got to have that idea anyway. I got an idea. I got to guess. It'd be awkward, but it wouldn't be terrible. What I think would be terrible is if we brought our credit card statements and our checkbook registries. I am with you. You in the back, I'm with you. If we taped those to the wall and we said, you spent what on what? Now that's going to be a meeting. That would be something where we all went, that's a little embarrassing. I don't know about you, but we're in the thralls of our taxes, and then you realize how much we spend on eating out. And we realized how much we spent on just entertainment. And it turns out I own stock in Starbucks. When we're not there a week, they send us a card to make sure we're okay. We were just checking on you. We were afraid. We didn't know. So maybe if we did that, I wonder what would happen. Our embarrassment, we would come in and we would have to be vulnerable for each other, and we'd have to admit where it went because, frankly, we're not handling our money or our possessions wisely. United States Gallup poll said this: how much annual income would it take to consider yourself rich? And it said people making less than $30,000 a year answered a little under $75,000. If somebody making 30 grand a year, if they made 75, they would consider themselves to be rich. It goes on to say that people making $50,000 a year said, what would it take for you to be rich? And the answer was just about 100 grand. It went on to say, if you made $100,000 a year, what would it take for you to be rich? And it was like 250. So rich is this moving target. It's a moving target. It slides on the scale because 98% of the U.S. would consider themselves to not be rich. 98%. 98% of those living in the United States would say, I'm not rich. 98% of the world says that the poor in the United States are filthy rich. When the continent of Africa is living on less than $1 a day, they look at us and they go, the router in your house doesn't cover Wi-Fi on all 3 levels? So you didn't walk 7 miles to get water? You guys have it terrible. So for us, 30 grand against the world is loaded. And for us, we're saying, if I could make 75, that'd be it. And if I could make 100, if I could make 250. In fact, the article goes on to say that those that had $2 million in actual cash assets said they would not be rich until they had 5 million. Now, don't throw rocks at them, because those of us making 30 grand said, I need 75 really to be comfortable. It's all relative. Wealth and rich is a relative saying. Craig Rochelle, one of the pastor, he said this. He said, since normal people don't believe they are rich, that's us, right? We're normal? Well, some of you are normal. Okay. Some normal people don't believe they're rich. So they generally skip through and skip past when the Bible talks about money because we don't believe it applies to us. When I read that, I went, oh my gosh. I never considered myself rich. I would fair to believe that you never considered yourself rich. Just making it, doing our best. So when we read passages that have to do with money and possessions, that we take in our mind the magic highlighter and they go, I got somebody that should read this, but it's not me. I know someone that could really use the help here because they're loaded, but not me. It doesn't apply. Money is stressful. Money causes stress and anxiety in our life. By its very nature, it's, do we have enough? Am I making enough? Do I owe too much? We're fear that we're going to run out. There's a great fear we're going to run out. And what about braces? What about college? What about the new tires for the car? What about a car? What about just a carburetor for the car so it doesn't sound like a car bomb? What about money equals stress? Now, Maslow didn't say in this basis in 1943 of his paper, he said, you know, we need food, we need water, we need heat, we need air. He didn't say, oh, yeah, and you need a wad of 20s. He didn't say that. And when Solomon, who had more gold than anybody else on the earth ever combined, says, I've had it all and it's meaningless. And so when Jesus says, I'm going to hit your basic needs. You're going to hunger and you're thirst, but here's what I got to give you is righteousness. And if you will seek righteousness, you will be filled. It would have been better, maybe, if he had said, listen, you're gonna want a lot of things, and so frankly, just go get it. Sell out, see what you can get, see what you can acquire. I mean, how can we even think about giving money away? How can we even think about giving money away when we're so stressed? How can we even think about what it would mean to give money away when we're so stressed? Luke chapter 12, verse 15 through 21 says this, and this was a moment Jesus is teaching the crowd. It says, then he said to them, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I want to tear down my barns. I'm going to build bigger ones. And there I'll store up my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be, and this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. Now, at first you think, when I read this, I thought, yeah, that's not terrible. I mean, this farmer has this bumper crop, and all of a sudden God's punishing him for success. I mean, when God really strike him down because he's successful? But this isn't about stretching a penny. This isn't about being frugal at heart. This is a heart issue. This is an attitude. And it made me think, I wonder if most money issues are heart issues. I wonder if most money issues are heart issues. See, the difference in this story, and there's the story, if we move on into the chapters of the Gospels, there's the story when Jesus is feeding the 5,000. The disciples say to him, they say, hey, everybody's hungry. What are we going to do? I mean, there's thousands of people, 5,000 men plus kids and women. What are we going to do? They got to eat. We don't have a kitchen. We got nothing. And this little boy walks up and he goes, hey, I got some bread and I got some fish. You can have them. Jesus takes it, divides it, and feeds the whole crowd. And they gather up surplus. Now, if this farmer had been involved in this story and it had been his bumper crop, he would have looked around and went, I got an idea to make a little money today. And he opens up a concession stand called Eat, Drink, and Be Merry, and he would have sold it for a profit instead of feeding the crowd. See, it's not a money and resource issue. It's a heart issue. It's a heart issue. So maybe we don't have money problems, we've got lifestyle problems. I mean, we've all made financial decisions that we regret. We've all failed. If we raised our hand, have you ever bought something so ridiculous that you got home and you realized, I'm an idiot? Yeah, we have. We have. We've gone to the store when we first started out, and even a few weeks ago, we went and got things, and we felt like we needed it. We had to have it. And then we get home, we're like, you're an idiot. Take that back. What are we doing? What are we doing? We got to learn from it and move on. See, but when we make the decision to withhold from God, it really speaks to our spiritual condition and not our financial well-being. When we make that decision to withhold from God, then it speaks to where we're at spiritually, not financially. Nowhere in Scripture does he tell us, I need to see thousands of dollars from you, or $500 from you, or millions of dollars from you. He says, I need you to give your best. In the Old Testament, he said 10%. So, we've done this time to time. I want to challenge you because I believe it's a spiritual barometer in our life. That we've done 90-day challenges before, and I want to encourage you and challenge you. Maybe today you say, I'm not in. I'm not tithing. I'm not. I just give some money every once in a while. I would challenge you today that begin. If you've never given before, try 2%. If you can do 2%, do 4%. If you've done that, go to 6%. Maybe you've been a part of the crowd that you grew up giving 10%, and maybe at times that God's asked you to do more, but you said, no, I'm giving you my 10, get off my back. Then maybe it's time to go beyond that. Maybe it's time to take a spiritual well-being assessment in our own life. See, the more we want, the more we crave, the more we spend, the more we become numb to the things of God. And the more that we are leveraged in our life, the less flexible we become to the things of God. So the more leveraged we become with our money and our possessions, the more leveraged we become with those things, that when he is whispering into your soul to go do something, or he's whispering in your heart to help this family out, or when he's whispering in your heart to go do something extravagant, you can't because we're leveraged to the hilt. So I believe in when it says you are hunger and thirst for righteousness, for you to be filled, it's really talking to us about what it means to sell out to him and what it means to turn over these resources. I mean, in Luke chapter 12, 22 through 23, it says this, then Jesus said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life and what you will eat, and about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body is more than clothes. It's righteousness that produces true wealth. It is righteousness that produces true wealth, not possessions and not money. Luke chapter 12, verse 32 says this, do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Whoa. Your Father's been pleased to give you the kingdom? Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out. A treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I wonder how our lives would be different if we decided that all I want is righteousness. God, all I want is my righteousness. All I want is to be meek before you. And all I want to have is your kingdom on your terms. I mean, Jesus gives us this promise. He goes on, and we'll talk about this later on, but in Matthew 6:33, it says, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Now, this isn't prosperity. This isn't, call in on valponas.org or check in on there and send us $5 and we'll send you a prayer napkin. That's not it. He's saying there's a promise. I'm going to give you the kingdom. The very kingdom we're living for is what I'm going to give you. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. I mean, we get it all. We get it all anyway. See, this world has this disease. It wants to eliminate this pain, and it calls it happiness, that we can get to the next high, the next moment where we feel good, but it never wants to deal with the disease. We keep talking about happiness. We keep talking about, I just want my kids to be happy. I just want to get home at the end of the day from a hard day's work or my weekend of playing, and we say, I just want to be happy. I don't want to hurt you, but that's garbage. That's garbage. That's settling for low-hanging fruit. And we need to thirst for righteousness. We need to hunger for righteousness. And these things, this true wealth, that's where it comes. And that brings joy and happiness. See, I think there are people looking for holy highs. And they think that if I can buy this, go to this, and this new experience, this spiritual ecstasy, they just want a feeling. They need to feel more. They need to do more. They need to commit more. But you're never truly going to feel the full joy and happiness unless you are craving righteousness. We're never going to get there. C.S. Lewis wrote this message, and it turned into a book. It's called The Weight of Glory. And let me read this to you. It says, it would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition, when infinite joy is offered to us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in the slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. We are far too easily pleased. We are far too easily pleased. That today is about this hunger. There are normal people in your communities, in your subdivisions, and in your family that are not going to get it. They're not going to get it. They're not going to understand that when you say, stop, I'm not doing it. I want to be wise with my resources. I don't need another high. I crave righteousness. I want to be filled. It's not about the stuff. You're going to be ridiculed. You're going to be tormented. You're going to be harassed at times. There are people who are going to whisper about you. They're going to believe that maybe you're having money woes. Maybe you've got this issue. Maybe there's a secret that you're hiding, but it's not, because you can come up front and you can just be bold and say, hey, I'm doing something different with my money. I'm impacting kingdom. So we got this struggle, this tension that we're caught in this love triangle. We have this desire to belong. We got this desire that we want to be all we can be. We got this desire that these basic desires that need to be met with food and water, rest and warmth. And then the third leg of that triangle is that all things that we're investing in on this planet are meaningless. And our righteousness leads us to eternal blessings and eternal investments. So today, as we go through the Beatitudes, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you. If you're not giving, it's not about the church needs your money. It's not. I believe that wholeheartedly. And if you're sitting there thinking, yep, I knew it was about the church, it's not. I believe that would be a pretty petty and puny God that if we had to stand and beg. I believe this is about our own spiritual well-being. When you and I are withholding from God, when you and I are withholding from God, no matter the amount, it's a spiritual issue, not a financial one. It's spiritual. And we got to take that barometer test in our own life and say, hey, I want to be whole. I want to be filled. I need to hunger and thirst for righteousness. I'm going to ask you to stand with me. I'm going to pray as a dismissal. I want you to know you are loved and that you are valued. But maybe today you'd like to say, hey, I'd like to come and pray. In the awkwardness of the moment, that maybe you're doing some self-evaluation and you realize that today's my day, that I'm going to hunger and thirst for righteousness. And in the stillness of this moment, I want to pray for you. And I'm going to invite you to come down. And as we pray a dismissal, stay put. I'll pray with you. I'd love to pray with you. Okay?